Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to England once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a good couple of times before, and I've had some very nice beers from these guys over the years. This is yet another brewery who made their name when it came to the big hazy New England style IPAs, and we've got another one of those to look at today, and this one is supposed to be very good, so needless to say I'm very curious to see how this one turns out. So for this review then we will head down to Manchester, which as we know is a very good beer city these days, and we're going to return to Track Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called If You Lose Me. It comes in at 8.5% ABV, and this one is another big New England hazy double IPA. So yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out. The last beer I reviewed from these guys was called Wake Up the Neighbours, which was also a big hazy double IPA. This one, I can't remember if it was 8% or 8.5, but yeah, that was a really nice beer. So on the back of that one, I'm very curious to see how this one turns out. But Track Brewing have a very good reputation these days. They're a highly recommended and highly decorated brewery, I guess we could say. So fingers crossed, this makes for another very good beer. And this is another one that I picked up from the House of Trembling Madness in York, incidentally. Great beer shop if you can get there physically, and they've got a great web shop there as well. The English beer tubers tell me this is one of the best value web shops that you'll find for English craft beer, so check those guys out if that's what you're interested in. But yeah, like I said, very curious to see how this beer turns out, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. Always nice to review some new things from Track when we can get the opportunity. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Track Brewing Company before. This must be review number 6 or 7 involving this brewery here on the channel, and I'm sure we'll add more to that in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the English beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to quite regularly at the moment because I am enjoying an extended period at home in the motherland of Scotland, so the English beers are very easily accessible, and that's never a bad thing because the English beer scene is thriving at the moment. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Track Brewing Company then, on to my brewery notes. So as I've told you before, Track Brewing Company are based in Piccadilly, an area that is really well known for its food and beer actually, in Manchester, and they were founded back in 2014 by Sam Dyson. So Sam had studied maths and economics at university, and he homebrewed while he was studying because it was basically a source of cheap beer. But over time he grew very fond of the science behind brewing and the creativity that it allowed him to have while still having this kind of central process that you were basically playing around with. But after studying, he took a trip on his bike, travelling across 5 continents and 25 countries. The first part of his trip was to go across the US, and it was there that he started visiting lots of different tap rooms and just building up his knowledge even further about beer. But when he returned to England, he went to London and he started working in the beer industry down there before returning to Manchester. But he rented out an archway on Sheffield Street, very close to the Piccadilly station in Manchester, and so there was a lot of food producers in this area and other craft breweries such as Cloudwater, Alphabet, and you know, all of these different things. But he was joined very early on in the company by Matt Dutton and also Will Harris, and since they've come into the company and helped get things off the ground, they've gone on to become very decorated, and they are one of the most respected craft breweries in England today. A lot of people really say that these are some of the best IPAs that you're going to find in England, and as I've said before, I've had some really nice beers from them in the past. But they've also got their own tap room now, just a few streets away from the brewery, and as of January 2021, when I'm reviewing this beer for you, they've produced around 280 different beers according to Untappd. So for having been founded about 6 years ago, 280 beers is a pretty damn good return. That is somewhere in the region of about 45 or 50 beers per year, so that's pretty impressive. Near enough one new beer every week. So yeah, pretty cool actually, pretty cool. But yeah, like I said, a very well respected English craft brewery, quite highly decorated these days too, and I've had some great beers from them. So if you are into your kind of hazy IPAs, then this is a brewery that you definitely want to check out. I think my next review that I do from these guys will have to be, you know, something from the dark end of the spectrum, or a lager or something like this, because it has only been IPAs that I've reviewed from them so far. But yeah, always nice to try some new stuff from Track Brewing, of course. And like I said earlier, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Track Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all those different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself then. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is absolutely lovely. This is part of their kind of Gold Top series, if you like, so there you can see that. I think these beers are just, you know, big beasts essentially, but I think this one should be really nice, the Gold Top Double IPA. But there you can see right in the middle, there is the Track Brewing Company symbol, and I think the name Track is just taken from either the fact that they're close to the railway or something to do with Sam's love of biking. But yeah, 8.5% double IPA this one. It's hopped with Citra, Enigma and Nelson Sauvin. Citra, we know, American hop, about 14% alpha acid, lovely big mango flavours and other little complexities. Nelson Sauvin, the classic New Zealand hop, usually about 16% alpha acid. It's a bit of a beast, that. White, green, grapey notes. And then Enigma is, well, I wouldn't say it's lesser known, but it's not as well known as the other two. That's from Australia, and it's got similar white kind of green gooseberry type notes that you'll get from Nelson Sauvin, but it's also got a little bit of a kind of red fruity character too, but about 14% alpha acid, if I remember rightly. Lovely Australian hop, and it's nice to see it getting a little bit of use these days. But yeah, beautifully presented beer. The malt base in this one is apparently extra pale malts, wheat and some oats, and I think that is about it. That's all the information we really have on this one. But yeah, 8.5% New England Double IPA, a cracking hop bill in it. I'm certainly looking forward to seeing how this one turns out. But yeah, 440 mils. I think I paid maybe about £7 or something, £6.50, something like that for it. So still cheaper than the Danish prices that I sometimes pay. But yeah, as I say, always nice to have the opportunity to try a few more Track beers and things. The can is sweating a little bit because the fridge is quite cold. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Very, very curious about this beer. The If You Lose Me, 8.5% Gold Top New England Double IPA. So, oh, it doesn't want to open. There we go. Always happens sometimes. There we go. There we go. Just a little bit of fizz on it as we open it up. You sometimes get that. This can was pretty damn full actually, but there we go, got it out this time. So yeah, let's get it out and into the glass, and you can smell it already with this beer. This is pretty damn fresh. But as I've always said, when it comes to these New England hazy double IPAs, I always like to leave them in the can for maybe sort of 10 days or so, just to let them mellow out, because if you drink these very, very fresh, you always get a little bit, the beers are just a bit too kind of green, I think. So yeah, that's just a personal preference. Some people like to drink these really fresh, but I always find you get a little bit of that. You get a bit too much green out of these beers compared to what you would with a West Coast IPA. So yeah, that's one of the things. But I think we're getting this one just in very good condition now. I've had this beer about a week, and I'm guessing, you know, it will have, they will have had it for a few days in the House of Trembling Madness before it was sent north. I just rinsed this glass as well, and I'm still getting some bubbles sticking towards the top of the glass there. But you can see this beer poured with about a quarter to a half finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. That is just fading away to be a very, very thin foamy layer, but it's leaving a nice ring around the edge of the glass as well. But yeah, in terms of a New England double IPA, this one certainly looks the part. In terms of its colour, I would describe this one as being a very kind of pale yellow. It almost looks like a bit of a kind of peach juice or pineapple juice colour. As you know, if you've watched the channel before, I love comparing these New England IPAs to different fruit juices. That was kind of how I taught myself the different flavours for all of these fruits, was just trying lots of different fruit juices. So yeah, I think the New England IPAs just look like fruit juices. So this one is a nice kind of pale sort of peachy, yellowy colour, this one. So yeah, a mix of pineapple and peach juice for me, this one, in terms of its colour. But yeah, you can see it is pretty hazy. If I shine the light through this, there's a little bit of light comes through at the top, but it does come across as being a little bit soupy and gloopy. And remember, when it comes to the colour of these beers, there's two factors that determine what colour your beer is going to be. One, the type of malts that you use, and then two, the length of the boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you'll get a darker colour. So usually with a New England IPA like this, it's maybe you know, it's probably around a 90, you know, sometime between a 70 and a 90-minute boil for something like this. But in terms of the pale colour in this one, it does look very, very nice. So I don't think there will be too many, you know, caramelly orientated malts in this. This one might well be a little bit more old school, but the level of haze is impressive. Like I say, quite soupy and gloopy. And remember, the level of haze that you have in these beers, it's dependent on the oats and the wheat content. And theoretically speaking, as you go up the alcohol scale, you should get more haziness because of higher oat and wheat components. But then it's all down to the ratios that the brewer uses. I've had, you know, triple IPAs that are not as hazy as this and things. So it's up to the individual brewer. But yeah, lovely looking beer, this one. Certainly nothing surprising about it when you consider what style it is. So yeah, just a lovely looking hazy IPA, this one. Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma of this one and see how we get on. Nothing surprising about this beer when you consider what style of beer it is. So let's go for it. Let's have a look at this. Yeah, this smells very, very nice. Straight away with this beer, you've got a lovely big kind of, you just get the juiciness out of it straight away. I really, really like how this beer goes together. Absolutely. So yeah, yeah. This beer is just, it goes together really, really nicely. I mean, I know all three of the hops in this one, and it's just, the aroma just hits the spot for me. I absolutely love it. But we'll come to the hops in a little bit in a minute. But let's have a look at the actual malt base of this one. So straight away with this beer, it strikes me as being well balanced between the wheat and the oats. If you take the aroma of this in, you do get a lovely kind of wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose there. There's a really nice kind of smooth creamy element to it as well. You get lovely big oaty characters, but you can also smell a little bit of the kind of extra pale in there as well. You get a little bit of that more kind of crisp white bready note, but I think the more and more that I smell of this beer, it leans towards that oaty side of things, the big sort of smooth creamy oats. But you can smell the wheat giving the beer just a little bit of thickness as well, but the wheat is a little bit more bitey. You get that right at the back of the nose, some smooth oats and a little bit of a kind of pale quality as well. But yeah, there are a few elements of a sort of Werther's original brown sugary note in this one, which I am kind of surprised about. So maybe it does say that there is barley malt in this, so maybe there is a little bit more than just extra pale. There might, you know, there could be a little bit, you know, Cara Munich or something like this. But it definitely does have a wee bit of a kind of slightly brown sugary note. That could well be the alcohol, of course, that's given it that. But you do get a little bit of that Werther's original kind of butter candy type note out of this beer in the middle of the palate. But yeah, the wheat, I think the more and more that I smell of this, I actually start to get more of the wheat as well. So the oats and the wheat really push their way out of this one, the more that you smell of it. But the malty base comes across as very nicely balanced, I have to say. I really like how everything goes together in this one. But yeah, nice malty base on this one. As I always tell you, I like to focus on the malty base a little bit because the malt for me can make or break the beer. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, there's a tiny little bit of earthiness to this one, but it's got a lovely big kind of green component. For me, this beer really leans towards the big floral aromatic side of things. I don't find this one overly kind of piney and resinous. For me, it's all, you know, it's quite a bright floral aromatic component to the green side of things there. Not spicy, just really deep and aromatic, and in some ways very bright as well. But yeah, on the grassy side of things, you do get some nice softer grassy components to it, and there's a wee touch of zestiness in there. But I mean, the hops that are in this beer, I wouldn't describe them as being particularly zesty, to be honest. I mean, you know, Citra can give you a little bit of a lemon-limey component, and I think there is a little bit of that coming out, mixing in with those kind of grassy esters. But other than that, this beer for me, the green component is overtly, you know, floral and aromatic. In some ways very bright, in some ways quite deep at the same time. So yeah, it's interesting that most of the hops in this beer, I'm sure, will be late addition hops. Because remember, if you add the hops earlier on during the wort boil, you'll get more bitterness and things and more kind of dankness out of them. But if you add them later on, that's when you get more flavour and aroma out of them. You've got a trade-off during the time of the boil, actually. But yeah, lovely smelling beer, this one, I have to say. So the fruity side of things then, which is the main focus with these New England hazy IPAs, my stomach's going. But yeah, getting excited for this beer, obviously. But yeah, there's a lovely blend of different things in here. You do get a little bit of that slightly stronger passion fruit from the Citra. You get some lovely big kind of mango-y qualities as well. And I mean, underneath that, You can pick out some of the softer tropical fruits, like, you know, papayas and apricots. These are quite common things to get with Citra. Citra's got a, you know, Citra's probably one of the most complex hops I think out there, along with the likes of Idaho 7. Citra is is a hop that can really stand up on its own actually, but it's really one of the most complex hops I think that you'll find out there, because you can get, you know, you can get lychees, you can get various different tropical fruits from it. You've got that stronger grapefruity, passion fruity element. You've got lemon, limey characters. All of these sorts of things. It just depends what malt base you put it in with. But yeah, you've got a little bit of that passion fruit, as I say. You've got some of the juicier mangoes, which you expect of Citra. That's its kind of trademark for me. But you've also got a few, you know, papaya and apricot-y little, you know, these softer tropical fruits coming out of the beer as well. But for me, it's got, you know, you do get a really nice sort of oily component at the front of the nose as well, and it's gooseberries, it's white and green grapes, and this is the Enigma and the Nelson Sauvin just working together actually. I really hope that OO Brewing in Sweden bring out the Nelson Sauvin Enigma 50/50 series. I would love to just try that and see how they turn out, because those two hops I think work really interestingly together. So yeah, you can smell that white, green, grapey component from the. You can definitely smell that from the Nelson Sauvin, but you can also smell the slightly more oily gooseberry quality from the Enigma in this beer as well. And those are very, very distinctive. Both of those combined give the beer a really oily component on the front of the nose for me. The red fruity notes that I should get from Enigma. I mean, there's a little bit of that. There is a little bit of like a sort of, you know, red curranty kind of note to the beer, maybe like a sort of creamy strawberry or something. So you do get a little element of that red fruity character out of this beer. And then on the very front edge of the nose, there is just a little bit of a kind of citrusy, zesty kind of thing from the grassy esters, and I would surmise that that's probably coming from the Citra. It just has a little bit of that kind of citrusy, zesty kind of thing there as well. But it smells like a lovely, lovely double IPA, this one. As I always say, take a bit of time and just enjoy that aroma before you get stuck into it. But we're going to have a taste of this beer now and see how we go, and I'm very curious about this. So this one is called If You Lose Me, a New England Hazy, whatever you want to call it, double IPA, 8.5% ABV from Track Brewing Company in Piccadilly down in Manchester. Citra, Enigma and Nelson Sauvin. Let's go for this. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, that is pretty damn special actually. You know, I enjoyed the last beer that I had from Track Brewing. It was really nicely done. But for me, this one just really hits the spot. I love, as you'll know if you've watched the channel for any length of time, the two, you know, probably the two things I really love in an IPA is if it leans towards the orangey side of things, and the other one is the kind of New Zealand oily fruits. I really, really enjoy those. And this beer, just the sort of more New Zealandy, oily kind of fruity characters in this one really just shine through, but it's got a lovely big malt base to it as well. It's just, for me, this is a very, very good all-rounder. I really, really like this one. So thumbs up to Track Brewing. This could well be the best beer I've had from them so far, and that's not to take anything away from any of the other ones I've had. Remember, you know, beer is subjective. Different people like different things, but for me, I really like this one. This is absolutely solid, definitely. So yeah, where to start with this beer? It's good. I do like the fact that it lets you know. Some of these double IPAs are very good at covering their alcohol, but this one just has a little bit of booziness to it, and I like that. You know, personally, I like that. If you're drinking an 8.5% or an 11% triple or whatever, I want the beer to let me know, yeah, this one is just a little bit stronger. And this one, it has that little boozy kick to it, which I quite like, and everything else about it's just really nicely done, I have to say. But yeah, let's try and break down this flavour and describe what's going on here, because this is a very, very well executed beer. So straight away with this one, in the middle third of your palate, you get a nice, you can feel that extra pale malt there. You can just feel that just blanketing the middle of your palate there. It gives you a sort of crisp kind of white bready character, which I think is really nice, but that smoothens out the further that you go into the aftertaste. But on that border region between middle third and back third of your tongue, there is a little touch of a more kind of bread crusty quality there. There are just a few kind of grainy components, and this is quite a common thing, of course, to find in the New England IPAs like this. But as you go to the back third of your tongue, again, and this is a common thing I'm getting in a lot of these IPAs recently, you get that smoother wheaty component to the beer, but there's also a little bit of bitiness. If you go to the very, very back of the palate, you get a nice little bit of kind of wheaty bitiness out of this beer. So yeah, I really like how that component goes together as well. But yeah, this is a really, really nicely done beer for me. I really like how this how that goes together. So yeah, nice little bit of a kind of wheaty. The wheaty bitiness just adds a little bit of bite to the beer that it needs, along with the green component. We'll come to that in a minute. But yeah, that wheaty bitiness at the back of the palate sits there, and as you move further forward, the bitiness does actually spread forward about halfway through that back third of your palate, but then it starts to kind of smoothen out and mellow out, and as you reach that border region with the kind of middle with the middle third of your palate, if you like, you can feel that there's just a little bit of a kind of bread crusty, grainy sort of thing there, but then suddenly the thickness of the beer will drop a little bit, you'll get the pale malts under there, and then you can feel in that middle third of your palate the oats. You just have the kind of oaty component of the beer sitting there. So yeah, it's really, really nice how that goes together as well. You can just feel that creaminess developing in the middle third of your palate there, particularly on the front half of that middle third of your tongue, which is nice there. The oatiness and that almost sweetness that you get from the oaty quality in this beer is very, very nice. But if you go to the very centre of your palate, you're going to get a little bit of a kind of Werther's Original kind of butter candy type thing, and that's the booziness of the beer. I'm not sure whether there would be something, you know, like Cara Munich or you know, a little bit of Cara Pils or something like that in this beer. I don't think Cara Pils, the graininess in that border region doesn't quite have the crispness to be Pils, but there could be a little bit of Cara Munich or something like that in this beer, just to give it a little bit of that more kind of brown sugary component. But it's not the sweetest of New England IPAs from that perspective, for sure. I think it is just the alcohol that's giving you a little bit of that kind of butter candy type thing, actually. So yeah, I really like how everything kind of pieces together in this beer. It's a very straight shooting malt base for me. It doesn't have too much in the way of complexity, but it's just really nicely crafted. So thumbs up to you know, thumbs up to Track Brewing Company for this. It's got a nice kind of more, I do like around the kind of back, in the middle, in the back half of that middle third of your tongue, it does have a little bit more of a kind of crisp, bready quality, but you can feel some of the sweetness that I was talking about there just spreading into that a little bit. So yeah, straight shooting malt base for me, but it works very, very well with the rest of the beer. So let's move on to the hoppy components then. In the back corners of the palate, there's a tiny little bit of earthiness. You're always going to get that, but as you move further forward, the earthiness does come forward a little bit, but then very quickly you start to get these deep floral aromatic components out of the beer, and those go together very, very nicely. So you can feel, I wouldn't describe this beer as being sort of piney and resinous. I know that some people have described, you know, Nelson Sauvin as having a big piney component, but I've always found it a little bit more kind of just like a deep floral aromaticity in a sense. This beer isn't spicy for me, it's just got quite a deep floral aromatic quality to it, and that comes out more and more as you move further and further forward towards that kind of front corner of your palate. Round the very front curve of the palate though, you get more of the grassy esters coming out, and it does have just a wee bit of a kind of zesty quality to it as well, actually. So the front curve of your palate is maybe a little touch drier almost than the other things that are coming out in this one. So yeah, that's a really interesting point to make about this beer. It does have a little bit more zestiness around the kind of front part of your palate. We detected that in the aroma a little bit, but I wasn't expecting it to be, you know, quite as noticeable as it is. But yeah, the green component of this beer kind of suits it nicely. A little bit more floral aromatic on the front corners of your palate, and that builds a good bridge with the wheaty side of things too. The zestiness as well comes out nicely from the grassy components. So yeah, good stuff again. But yeah, let's focus on the fruity component then. So as I always say, on the front third of your tongue, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out, and these are the things that are extracted from the hops. But on that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you do almost get a little bit more of a kind of there is almost just a little bit of that kind of wheaty, bitey sort of thing. There is just a little bit of a grainy, white bready quality to the beer. But yeah, on that back part of the front third of your tongue, you get that slightly stronger passion fruity note, which will be the Citra. That's Citra all the way there. You do get a little bit of that big kind of passion fruity note. I wouldn't go as far as describing it as being as pungent as grapefruit, definitely more passion fruit. But then yeah, as you move further forward, that mellows out a little bit. You start to get the mango components in there. And the mango does have a wee bit of pungency to it as well. As you progress further into the aftertaste and as you move towards the kind of centre of that front third of your palate, you might get a few things like, you know, these, you know, softer apricot papaya flavours. But I would say that the tropical side of this one really comes across as being a little bit more mango-like, to be honest with you. So yeah, it does have a little bit of that going on. It's a little bit of mango, you know, maybe a wee bit of guava or something as well. I recently reviewed a beer from one of my local breweries that had guava, and it was a guava lager. So this beer to me almost has a little bit of just a guava component there on that back half of the front third of your tongue. But then as you reach the front half of that front third of your tongue, you start to get the more oily components from the Enigma and from the Nelson Sauvin coming out. So that front half of your palate is really a mixture of like grapefruit, oh sorry, not grapefruit, the brain's not working, of gooseberry, sorry, and then those kind of white green grape esters. I think it's like the Enigma's gooseberry, the slightly more oily gooseberry character from the Enigma is forming the base on that very front part of your tongue. Then on top of that you get the more sort of light, you get those lighter kind of, how would we say that, you know, those lighter white green grapey sort of things there. Perhaps just further on the kind of nearly right on the tip of the tongue, but just before that you will get a few of the little red fruity components, like a slightly red curranty note of the beer. I wouldn't go as far as saying a kind of candied strawberry, but it's not a million miles away. So you do get a little bit of that red fruity component from the Enigma, just almost right on the tip of the tongue there. But again, around the very kind of front edge of the palate, you've got the grassiness in there. There's a little bit of zestiness, and you probably could argue that that's a little bit, it's got a wee touch of lime, a wee touch of lemon in there. So that'll be from the Citra, I would think. So the Citra just kind of shows its head again on the very kind of front tip of the tongue. But yeah, front half is very oily, gooseberry, white, green, grapey sort of things. Little touch of that kind of red curranty, almost strawberry-like thing that you can get from the Enigma. Strata is another hop that's not a million miles away from Enigma in that sense, but Strata's got a more tropical note to it rather than the kind of gooseberry-like things. But yeah, the Citra I think shows its head on the back half of that front third of your tongue. The Nelson Sauvin and the Enigma are more dominating on the front half of the front third of your tongue. But it's a really nice fruity combination, this one. It's got a good balance between the kind of softer tropical notes and those more oily gooseberry grapey sort of things. So for me, this beer just really hits the spot. I love the oily, I love these kind of big oily fruity New England IPAs, and this one certainly hits the spot in that sense. So again, big thumbs up to Track Brewing for this. It's a beautifully done beer, and that's what we've come to expect from this brewery. So yeah. But yeah, I think this is a good place to round off the tasting section of this video. But yeah, on the mouthfeel then, this beer for me, in terms of that, I would say it's kind of bottom end of full bodied for me, maybe pushing towards the mid end of full bodied. It's not the thickest of New England double IPAs I've come across, but it's not a million miles away. Again, I keep using that phrase in this video. But yeah, lovely kind of big smooth. It's got a lovely big kind of smooth and slightly thicker component to it, which is nice. The carbonation is very, very smooth, and I would describe this beer overall as being, you know, very smooth, not quite slick, but not such a creamy beer. This one, it's quite a big oily kind of New England IPA for me, but it's got a good smooth component to it there. In terms of the hoppy bitterness and things, it's kind of hard to say, to be honest. I mean, I think it's got at least 30 IBUs to it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's 40. Because you know, I've always found that with these New England IPAs, if you've got a single New England, then you want about 30 IBUs. If you've got a double, 40 is good. And then if you're in the triple region, I would say, you know, 50 IBUs is a good marker for this one. So I wouldn't be surprised if this beer is somewhere between 40 and 50 IBUs, because you do, the further you go into the aftertaste, you do get more of this kind of floral aromatic thing showing its head. But the malt base, like I said, has a lovely kind of smoothness to it. There's a wee bit of you know, a slightly pilsnery malty kind of dryness there. I wouldn't, you know, and the more of a grainy note rather than pilsner, to be honest with you. But I do wonder, the more I drink of it, is there a touch of, you know, pilsner malt in this one, just to give it a little bit of crispness. But yeah, the malt base for me, it's got a little bit of a, it's got a nice bit of smoothness to it. It thickens up the more you drink of the beer, of course. Then you've got these big kind of fruity, juicy notes. The tropical fruits for me are quite smooth, but the gooseberries and grapes and things are more oily. And I would say that this is one of the more kind of oily New England doubles that I've come across in terms of its fruitiness, but it's also got a very nice smoothness both from the malts and from those tropical fruits there. But it's a very, very interesting beer. It's very well executed, and like I said, that's what we've come to expect from Track Brewing over the years. So let's leave it at that for this one. I think that covers this beer pretty well. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Track Brewing Company. This has been a really, really nice one to try. It has really hit the spot for me with the Nelson Sauvin and the Enigma, two of my favourite hops, I think, without question, and the Citra just complements them very, very nicely. But yeah, big, oily and very smooth New England double IPA for me, so really well done from Track Brewing. So as always, please let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Track Brewing. Check out my social media, check out Track Brewing Company, and we will see you again very soon in another beer review. So this one was the If You Lose Me Gold Top Double IPA with Citra, Nelson Sauvin and Enigma, coming in at 8.5% ABV from Track Brewing Company in Piccadilly down in Manchester. Thank you again for watching, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Check out Track, check out my stuff, and I'll see you guys very soon. Slàinte, skål, cheers.